Hi, welcome to the Diablo 3 Reaper of Souls podcast. I'm your host, Flux, and I'm joined on this special, super big show by Katniss.
Aloha.
And by one of our IncGamers overlords, Paul, aka Rush.
Hello.
Say something in Scottish.
If I just talk, then it's Scottish, so it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, there you go. Awesome. And you've got your bagpipe and your kilt, so you're ready to roll, right?
Yeah, I especially put it on for the podcast.
Well, I took mine off, so we're even. So Paul is joining us briefly. We're hoping Ranko will be able to join us in a little bit. He's running a little late, and Paul is going to talk about, he just posted a Diablo 3 Reaper of Souls review on IncGamers.com, which is our parent overlord site. And after he's going to talk about that for about 15 or 20 minutes and some other video game general stuff, and then he's going to go off and have tea and crumpets. And Katniss and I will talk about the Crusader and recent skill changes and patches and stuff, and hopefully Ranko will be able to join us by then.
So, that sounds fantastic.
Wonderful. Yes, great.
Absolutely.
Kiss my ass, please. Okay, so Paul, so you run IncGamers and you write lots of video game reviews. It's a PC gaming only site these days.
Yep.
And you just posted your Reaper of Souls review, and the first sentence of your review includes I'm quoting you. The original Diablo 3 was a broken game with a terrible loot system in an unwelcome auction house.
Yeah.
Yeah, but other than that,
Yeah.
so that's how your review starts, and then where does it go from there?
Well, apart from that and the terrible dialogue and the shockingly bad story,
But other than that, it was awesome.
What else is left after that?
Well, I'll put a sort of disclaimer on here. I didn't do the original Diablo 3 review. Tim actually did the original review on the site, and his expectations would probably be slightly different from mine. His expectations would be probably along the lines of a more general PC game reviewer, and so we scored it pretty high at the time. But that's the nature of any review is it's an individual's opinion. So that
and you had that fat envelope of cash from Blizzard too, right?
Oh yeah, of course, yeah, because Blizzard are always dropping us big chunks of change.
Exactly.
God.
Well, they say
If only. So, for this one, I took this one on. It was kind of weird for me because I think I was probably the only one on the site, as per usual, that didn't actually get on the beta. So I didn't actually play the beta at all. I've seen it and I've tried it briefly or whatever. Because we're so busy with so many different things that we have to cover, it was kind of like, okay, well, it's in the beta, and I knew you guys were on the case, and that's fine. I mean, that's what you guys are there for. So I was kind of going into Reaper of Souls. It hit midnight, straight into the game, and I had the whole thing wrapped up by I think 4:30 in the morning. So it was a little disappointingly short from my point of view, but you could kind of see where all the changes were, and how the game had actually improved for playability wise. But also getting adventure mode unlocked was really the priority, because that's the way to play the game right now.
Yeah, I did a news post about, I rounded up, I don't know, 80 or something Reaper of Souls reviews, and the average was 86, and the average for Diablo 3 reviews was 88. And of course, as I just quoted your review, Diablo 3, as you just said also about your review, everyone reviewed it really well at the start. 88 average, obviously, is pretty good. But then, of course, the fan votes were, terrible on Amazon and stuff. A lot of that was just people that were angry about the auction house on real money trading and online only. But if people had reviewed Diablo 3 after 6 months, it would have been more like the first sentence of your review for a lot of people.
This is a problem, actually, with game reviewing in general, and it's a big problem. In fact, just today, actually, I had an email from the PR company that's handling Elder Scrolls Online saying, "Oh, where's your review?" And I was like, "Okay, just let you know, this is an MMO. We played the beta. We didn't think it was that great. So what we're going to do is give it a bit of time to settle, and then we'll go back in and we'll have a look at it." But the majority of game websites, within a day of the game coming out, there's reviews online, giving it really high scores. And you're just like, well, how can you possibly, put an opinion on something after 5-6 days play on something like an MMO? And to a certain extent, Diablo's kind of the same. The problems don't really become apparent until you played it for a reasonable length of time. Like you start realizing that, the loot's terrible and the skill doesn't do this or whatever it is. and it's a real problem with video game reviews. And if you look at Metacritic, which really is the benchmark from which all PR and publications gauge the success of a video game. If you look at sites like IGN, for example, they always really highly score, and the same with GameSpot. All the AAA titles will always get a great score, and it really doesn't help. It really doesn't help the consumer. So one of the things that we've made sure that we've done on IncGamers is that basically, we've got an embargo day saying, hey, you guys, you can post a review on launch day or the day before launch or whatever. But if we don't feel that we've played it enough, we're not going to worry about that review embargo. We're just going to ignore it, and we'll just get it done when it's done. So we may not be the fastest at getting reviews online, but at least we know that whatever we put up is of good quality. And that's a lot of the problem right now with a lot of video game reviewing, is that people are trying to rush to get deadlines. They're basically looking for clickbait and hit generators to bring in more banner ads. And it's kind of okay for a while, and then people start to realize, and they go, oh no, that's just so wrong. I think actually one of the links that you put in the your review score wrap up was the one to our Thief review, which we gave a 3 out of 10. Now, the guy who reviewed it was Peter, that's played every Thief game under the sun. He knows the franchise inside out, and he just felt it was terrible. Whereas most sites were giving it like 8 9s, so. That's
not the best example, though, because that wasn't an MMO kind of thing that took 6 months to unfold. That was just being honest about a game that had issues. But I think what you say is really true about Diablo 3 or something. I mean, it was really great at first. It's pretty. The skills are fun. The items are fun. And then people played it for a few months, and they were like, well, I can't find any upgrades, and they doubled difficulty, etc. But then Reaper of Souls seems like everyone is much more positive in sort of a... I mean, obviously we can't be... it's only been 2 weeks, right? And we had a pretty good sized beta, which had almost the entire game in it. Whereas the Diablo 3 beta just had, the very beginning of Act 1. But it seems like you can just jump in here, Katniss. You can wake up and talk for a moment. But just that, it's harder to, we were all probably a little bit overly fanboy right when Diablo 3 came out, and maybe we're thinking we know more than we do with Reaper of Souls. But it does seem like we have a much better sense of what the end game and the overall structure. And that they've added, as Paul said, you can get to the content in a few hours, but it's really about, adventure mode and rifts and a much deeper itemization system and stuff, yes?
Absolutely, yeah. I think one of the big caveats that seems to plague a lot of the early impressions, too, is that when you're doing, a review of a game and you only have, part of it. Like, I believe the beta for the original Diablo 3 was just up to the Skeleton King. So people couldn't even give any sort of, impact or impression on what the end game was going to feel like, what it would feel like to progress through, I don't know, 4 different difficulties of the same exact content. You know what I mean? So it kind of lends itself to having these really positive affections tied to it because, yeah, you play, level 1 through 13 and you're finding gear all the time and it feels really good. But Reaper of Souls is different in a way because we did have all that access to it, up until the only thing cut out was the Malthael fight. But I think just because we got so much transparency about how they were developing it too, and the fan feedback from even creating our own legendary, and just being able to talk with the devs about the process, I think that helped to engender that positive atmosphere.
So is there a solution to this, Paul? You and I were talking about this in instant messaging a little bit at the time. It's just like, a lot of sites, as you say, any AAA title gets like an 8 or a 9 or better, no matter unless it's just cripplingly game broken issues. But you can't really judge games that quickly. So do you guys think about doing re-reviews going back 6 months later or something? But kind of like, what's the point? No one's going to rebate at that point.
Yeah, well, we have done it mainly for MMOs. Just because of the nature of what they are. I mean, if you look at WoW, for example, how that game has changed in the last 10 years. I mean, it's just not even the same game. Vanilla WoW is just so different. And then when they started changing it, people started dropping away because they didn't like the changes and so on. So you could effectively be constantly reviewing a game. But ultimately, as far as PR is concerned and the publisher developer is concerned, they don't really care. They're just looking for that high score within the first week to drive sales. That's really what it's about. I don't know at what point or if this will ever change. I mean, I know that just from a bit of anecdotal evidence that we know that some money does change hands through advertising deals and so on. We know this happens. I mean, I've spoken to people in the industry over the years. I don't know how much of a problem that is now. I think one of the guys at GameSpot actually resigned over this about 2 or 3 years ago. I can't remember the guy's name. It's just really bad of me. But, this stuff still goes on. And, last year there was a big scandal with journalists basically trying to promote games, and they basically saying how great they were and stuff like that. And
did you do an air quotes thing when you said journalists there?
Yeah. I mean, that's another thing as well. I mean, it's really weird for us on IncGamers because we're a really small team. There is 3 of us. We haven't got a pool of 20 writers, but what that does is that we all know each other really well. We all know our strengths. We all know what kind of games that we like to play. So we never take on, we'll never hand a review out to somebody who's just instantly not going to like it. If somebody gave me a turn-based strategy game, I'd be weeping. I can't stand turn-based strategy games. But where, on the other hand, Peter loves them. So it's really giving the game to the person who can be really objective about it, like the genre, but still be objective about the game. And I think a lot of the problem with games journalism at the moment is there are a lot of freelance writers involved. So they're not part of the organization. They may not know each other quite so well, so they basically get commissioned to write the review and then they come back, which is probably why you see so many reviews actually going up so quickly, because they just want to get their paycheck in. It's not in a great state right now, video game reviewing. It really isn't. But going back to Reaper of Souls, I really am enjoying it, and I was walking around last weekend down in rainy Dorchester I was soaking wet, and I'm just thinking I could be at home playing Reaper of Souls, and
you could be running bounties right
now. Exactly, and that's kind of like, well, that to me that's the mark of a game that is making me want to go back to. We have tons of games. I've got games that I need to do and get on with, but if there's one game that I've already done and it's asking me to go back to it, then I know that they've done a good job on it.
Did you try to factor some of that into your review? I mean, obviously, as you say, Diablo 3, you didn't really have a full picture of it for months and months. So when you're playing Reaper of Souls or another MMO, are you thinking, well, this is really fun now, but is this going to last for 6 months or 8 months? And is that a different approach than
having played?
If you just had some quick adventure game, you're like, this is fun for one time through, then you're done with it. So you don't really worry about the long term.
But having played stuff like Diablo 2, I kind of know what to expect from it, and even Diablo 1. So I know what kept making me want to go back and play that game. And I think my biggest issue with RoSS was the fact that I'm going to say Ross as in Ross, okay?
That was like the biggest debate about the last podcast.
Yeah, it's not RoSS. Jeez.
Ross.
Jeez. In fact, I think Ellie's going to pick you up on this at some point and argue the case for Ross.
Well, I mentioned that you said that on the last podcast. We had it's like a 10-minute debate, and then like every comment was about that. Is that appropriate or not? So it's nice that you're here to say it directly from the horse's mouth, so to speak.
Yeah, absolutely. I forgot what I was saying now. That's terrible.
You were saying Ross.
Yeah, I was saying Ross. I can't remember what I was. My train of thought was completely gone. I've blown it now.
All Katniss's fault. He interrupted you.
as I usually do.
But I think my biggest issue, I know what I was going to say. My biggest issue with Ross was effectively there's a lot of stuff that went into the game that kind of should have been fixed with Diablo 3. Okay, and we know that the management changes with Josh coming in and Jay moving on to another project. I mean, that's the best thing that Blizzard could have done. They needed a fresh pair of eyes on this. And if you think about all the stuff that you were writing on the site prior to the release, we get a bit of flack for it, but we were actually making valid points and valid criticisms of things that were wrong with the game. But the Blizzard weren't really listening to what the community was actually saying that was wrong with the game. So it's taken like another year or so to get to the stage where they fixed the game that was broken. So if you take that out of it and then you think, okay, well, what content have I got? Okay, we got the Crusader class, we've got the adventure mode, we got the bounties, and so I mean that's good. But my biggest issue was actually the price, because there's a lot of people now that basically maybe have not bought Diablo 3 because of a lot of the negative feedback that came out. But if they want to play what is now effectively an improved Diablo 3, and we're not talking Loot 2.0 here, we're talking the whole game, the whole experience. Now you've got to buy the original game, which is about £16, then you've got to pay £32 for the expansion. Now, I do think the expansion was slightly overpriced, and that probably factored in the fact that the game didn't get a 9 on the site. And I think I did say that at the bottom, that I just thought it was, at the end of the review, that I just thought it was a bit pricey.
Well, that was some of the debate. It was people were saying it was just overpriced DLC kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, this is another thing with Diablo as well. You know, if you look at stuff like Path of Exile, Marvel Heroes, and so on, you know, there's content going in, you know, all the time, and they're making stuff off microtransactions. I just would have loved to have seen, you know, Blizzard not always go for the box product model and actually offer small piece DLC. I just think it would be keep their bank balance ticking over now that the auction house is gone. I just think it would be a really cool thing to have done.
I mean, you can
Well, they have sparkle ponies, and WoW.
They do. You can kind of say though that you know, they were kind of working with that model with just the sheer amount of patches that they put into the original game.
Sure.
Obviously, because they were needed, and we didn't have to pay for them because they should have been in the game in the first place. But
Yeah, man.
2-year beta test, man.
Oh my God, I love all those stuff, all those things. But yeah, I mean, with the addition of the Paragon system, which, you know, a lot of people say, oh, it's just a crutch, give us something to do in the meantime before they fix the game. But even like 1.0.8, which I felt like was a very game-changing patch, just with the density improvements and the BOA crafting and things like that, it put the game in a better place, and it was stuff that obviously took development time, and they had come out and said on a couple of occasions that all the patching did hamper Reaper development. So I mean, it is one thing for them to constantly add those changes, but then you also have to look at the long-term effect of that too, which is it'll just take that much longer to get those really big fat pieces of content that we all want, something like an expansion with another hero, you know, and more stuff to do.
I think Blizzard's I think attitude's not the right word, but they're kind of don't look at the Diablo franchise like they look at the WoW franchise, for example. I kind of feel that it's kind of the little brother that doesn't get any love. I mean, it should. I mean, it's a big franchise, Diablo. I mean, it really is. It's for me, it's probably their main thing, you know. And I just kind of feel like it kind of got a bit neglected when the original Diablo 3 was put out, and you know, they're making a huge amount of cash on WoW, and they've got to keep the business going. So yeah, you got to pump resources into that. There's no doubt about that. But I just kind of feel that, you know, Diablo 3 could be a bigger thing than it currently is. I mean, if you look at the box sales, for example, I think it was 2.7 million, which is not bad going. But considering this is such a game-changing expansion, I really kind of would have expected more people to go, oh wow, you know what, I'm going to go back and then play this. I don't know if people were just waiting to see more reviews arrive or what, but or whether there's just more titles in a similar vein now on the market with, you know, Marvel Heroes having launched Path of Exile and so on. So maybe they've lost a little bit of the player base to that. But for me, having played all those games, still something about Diablo when you play it and the visuals and the audio and everything. I mean, I love the visuals in Diablo 3. I don't care if people go rainbows and all this kind of stuff, you know, sparkle ponies.
Right.
To me, it's always looked fantastic, and I just think it looks even better now with the Reaper of Souls with Act 5. I just think it looks fantastic, and it's kind of how I expect a Diablo game to be.
Yeah. I would guess, you know, the things that you described is probably a combination of a few of those. Just the fact that there are other titles in the same genre now that have developed over time for people to, you know, play and have their attention and their money diluted into. And also, I think there's just still that feeling of like, I got burned when I bought Diablo 3 back in May 2012. And so people are going to be a lot more tentative to fork over, especially if I agree too with the thought that the expansion was a little bit too pricey. And so I'm thinking that, you know, all of those things combined made it so that those box sales could have been higher. But then again, also the fact that it is an expansion, I would imagine that those numbers are pretty good for expansions, right?
Yeah, you know what, I couldn't actually give you a comparison on that. I don't know. It's a bit of a difficult one just because of Diablo's history and what's gone before post Diablo 3 release. I'm kind of hoping that with the time when they announce, the next expansion for it, that they'll make it such a good deal that basically, you'll get the Reaper of Souls with, like a battle chest type of thing.
Yeah.
And then that's maybe when people will go, oh, you know what, this is a really good deal. It's well worth the money. This is Reaper of Souls has had really positive feedback. I think I'll spend a bit of money and actually get back into this, but it can take a little bit of time.
Okay, that's a good point to end on, Paul. You had to rush and do some other. You're furiously working on getting the skills and other stuff into the Diablo wiki tonight, I believe.
Yeah, just
battling with scripts and all those things that I don't do
God.
because they're numbers and they make my pretty little head hurt.
oh, please, I don't want to see the word fixes anymore.
Not enough of fixes.
And thanks for your time, Paul.
Okay, guys, have fun.
Cheerio.
Thanks, Paul.
Cheerio. I'm off to go play some bagpipes and eat some scones. Don't forget, it's RoSS.
Yeah, no, not Ross.
I expect when I tune into this podcast after it goes up, I expect everything to be referred to as RoSS.
Oh, I just can't. I can't do it.
Yep.
Put a vote up about that this week.
Okay, well, you can fight over it with Ellie next time she's on.
Okay. Toodles.
Okay, bye-bye.
I think he's gone. Okay, Rankill's not here yet, so I guess it's just you and me.
All right, we'll make it work.
So, but it's funny, you mentioned you overpriced the overpriced Reaper of Souls expansion. You didn't pay anything for Reaper of Souls expansion. You got it for free. Well, actually, you paid a round-trip ticket from Boston to LAX, a quarter price of a hotel room, and listening to Waterfiend snore all night. Is that worth it?
That's correct. It added up, it made it worth it, especially because it wasn't only just the game that I was buying, but I was also buying that lovely experience of, being out there and in the graces of people like Josh Mosquera and Wyatt Chang and all those cool people, and actually getting to talk to them, face to face, rather than this whole like weird Twitterverse where you throw something out there and you hope someone replies to you and then you feel cool when they do.
Did you touch Lyleria?
We might have shaken hands.
That counts.
Nice.
You still imparted some of her seamness and her red hair, so that was really worth the trip right there.
I mean that paid for it all in spades right there.
So you were at PAX today. Penny Arcade Expo is in Boston, and you are in Boston, so you've been to fly across the country. And 2 weeks ago, you were at the Reaper of Souls launch party on a weekend. What do you do on your weekends when you're not attending gaming launch parties or conventions?
I play Diablo, man.
You bang supermodels and you level a Crusader.
That's right. Yep. I import that chick from the art gallery over in California, and we have good times. And she.
Can you actually balance the laptop on her lower back so you can play? And okay, never mind. That's just burn their tramp stamps. They don't like that.
Oh God, yeah. What rating is this podcast? I might have to stamp it. What rated are there?
C-17. So how was Penny Arcade Expo? You mentioned the only thing of Diablo there was they're still showing the Ultimate Evil Edition, the PS4 thing. Is there a release date on that yet, or they're still just showing it off?
They're still showing it off. The main. So Blizzard had a very huge presence there, but it was interesting because it was all dedicated to Heroes of the Storm. So, at the actual Blizzard booth on the floor, they've got this pretty giant square that's taking up, you could almost say the middle. And in the middle of that square is this huge cabinet of just screens for 5-on-5 Heroes of the Storm, 2 of those, and then 5 screens for going against the AI. And that was the line that had the largest queue. There were people who were also lining up for like Warlords, and of course to try the iPad Hearthstone. And then they had only 2 TVs and systems running the console version. And it was actually pretty easy to get in and get to play. It wasn't like people were lining up out the door for it. So it seems like the hype isn't really there for it yet, just because it's been lost in the glitz and glamour of Reaper having come out just 2 weeks ago. But we also just haven't heard anything new about it. So I think people are still kind of waiting until they hype it and give us that release date.
Yeah, I've been doing endless wiki updates the last week or so. I've hardly even had time to play, and I was just doing literally like this morning or last night, I forget. It's all sort of a blur at this point. But doing the Ultimate Evil Edition page, I'm like, wasn't this coming out now? Isn't there a release date? I'm looking around on Amazon and stuff, and it's like, we will notify you when this product is available. And Blizzard's a page for it, just sort of this blog thing they posted last year, with like a little demo video. It's like, well, this isn't really what I thought they would have of this. So maybe there's tech issues in getting it all finished, or I don't know why they would want to delay it past. You get Call of Duty and stuff. It's a big deal, these simultaneous releases, PC and consoles at the same time.
Yeah.
So I don't think they would delay it on purpose. They just must not be ready yet.
Yeah, I wonder, or maybe just the fact that so much other stuff is going on within Blizzard. I don't know if they're cognizant of, oh, we don't want to release around, Hearthstone getting its big announcements, or we don't want to release around Heroes, opening their beta up or something like that.
I would have thought they wanted to release it 2 weeks ago if they could, same day as the console, as the PC. But
It would make sense. I wonder too, because they haven't announced anything about the Xbox One, and I wonder if they're waiting to, say, oh, it's going to be on Xbox One too, and here's your release date, so they can really, cash in on. Don't worry if you were just thinking you had to buy a PS4 for this. Like, you're going to be able to do both.
you have to buy Xbox One also. You must get them all, like Pokemon's.
Collect them all. Got to catch them
I
all.
think it was like months between the Xbox 360 and the PS3 release though. So and the announcement as well. For some reason, Xbox is always long behind the PlayStation announcements. But anything else exciting at PAX? I mean, non-Diablo, non-Blizzard that you want to say, talk about for briefly, just for the hell of it?
Oh, sure. That was my first time going to a convention like that, so I was kind of. It's always weird to me to enter these worlds, like even being out in California and hanging out with you guys last time. It's just like this is weird to be in a room full of people that all care about this same game thing that I play in my room and don't talk about at work. And then to go to this convention today, and there are people walking around with swords and like dressed up as Link and characters from games I've never even seen, but then someone walks by like, "Oh my God, I love that game." I'm just like, where am I? It felt like the Twilight Zone, but it was such a really cool experience. And Whitney Nineball was asking me, what would you say about PAX? Like, how was it? And I just told him it was immense. Like, there was just so much sound and sight and everything. Like, you were getting blasted by screens. People were doing shoutcasts of different MOBAs and things in one corner, and then they're playing a Magic tournament over here, so they're trying to shout over the other guy so they can be heard and get more people over at their booth. So it just felt like this, like almost like you go to a bazaar or something, and they're like, "Buy my melons." No, these melons are better. It was crazy. I loved it.
And then and the next door is Melons 2.0, and they're even better.
Exactly. Don't invest in those melons.
I've never gone to PAX, but I went to E3 multiple times back when it was the really big deal, before there was even a BlizzCon. So that was where I used to go see Diablo 2 when they were developing it, like in 99, 98, 99, and then in the early 2000s and stuff, when they were doing Diablo 2 expansion. And it was like that. I mean, it's just exhausting. I mean, I was in the LA Convention Center, which is like twice the size of the Anaheim Convention Center. If people have been to BlizzCon and can compare it. But they would have this whole huge, and just, I mean, it's like a 60-foot ceiling, and it's just this aircraft hangar-sized thing, and there's just these gigantic displays for every game you can imagine. Every new game coming out. I remember back in the day, it was like, BattleTech and Prince of Persia and all this kind of stuff would have these like 50-foot walls, and you have to walk around this whole long thing to get into it, and just deafening. Just deafening
Yes.
noise. The worst thing was always, there's the play demos, and all these booths have like disco lights overhead with like spotlights. They have the spotlights that are constantly moving around, and there's like 7 different little beams instead of just one big spotlight. And you're playing a game, and this thing is like shining right over the top of the monitor into your eyes as you're playing it. And you're having like epileptic seizures trying to play a video game. It's just, you get the worst splitting headaches. It's so loud. I would just get exhausted at those. You just go back to the Blizzard booth and like sit down in the corner and talk to Bill Roper or something. It's like, God, I'm so tired from this. And it's like 4 days long. So.
And that's the thing too. I have to go back tomorrow and Sunday. I mean, I don't have to, but I want to. But I'm just thinking, like, do I even have the energy to like continue? It feels like a marathon that you're running. And like
your attendance is mandatory. There's no escape.
You must be there.
Gabe and Tycho will come to your house and kick you squat in the nuts if you don't go back.
No, it was just it definitely felt like I was sprinting a marathon. But it was a ton of fun. Like you just run into when I first got in, I was just walking down the steps and Nevelistus goes running by me like, we have last minute preparations of things to do. And so like that was my introduction to the floor, and it was just that times 100 once they let all the other people in, and you get these crowds where no one's moving. Wild Stars got their huge billboard and screen going on, and then this other thing's got this dinosaur that's like growling at their billboard, and you're just like, holy crap, dude, when can I get an Advil, please?
What's the Sausage Fest ratio there?
So that was also another thing that I wanted to talk about. I could not believe the amount of girls, and good-looking girls, mind you.
Yeah, it's not E3 then, is it?
Huh?
It's changed over years. At E3 used to be like 90% male, except for the booth babes, basically.
Really?
It was just all guys. But I think Penny Arcade is much more inclusive, and gaming has gotten kind of a wider audience now. So how was it? There were actual females?
There were a ton of females, and a lot of them were...
Were they wearing handcuffs, or were they there by their own choice?
They were actually there of their own free will. A lot of them were doing
Unlike my first wife.
Oh, that first wife, man. She takes a beating.
Well, and she liked it. So anyway, you're at PAX and there's girls.
Yes, and a lot of them are doing the cosplay so that, up the hotness factor too. Just because a lot of those costumes that they play tend to be rather scantily clad and whatnot. But
Yeah, they're all glorified bikinis, basically.
seriously though, the one thing that I do really like about PAX, I don't know if they had this at E3, but they do a lot of panels where the developers and just influential people within the gaming community will go and talk about kind of issues that surround gaming. So some of the panels are, women's roles in video games and how, there's like this misogynistic factor versus like creating a strong feminine lead character, talking about like transgender and all sort of like just these cool like liberal ideas. And they host these panels that people get to go and ask questions and just kind of hear like stories about gamers who have these, crazy experiences online dealing with people. So I like that kind of humanitarian aspect of it too. It's not just about the games and getting to preview and play and get swag and all that, but you can actually get some educational parts from it too.
Yeah, it is interesting that, half the population, I think like 51% of the population of gaming age is female, and it's like so many games for so long, it was just like, bikini bimbos, and that was all there was in the whole game. And you're like really violent, no story, blood and death, whatever. And you've had this just for years and years of, I mean, you can read articles about this forever. We don't want to derail the whole podcast into gender issues, but, for a while you was just like, it's the same shitty game, but now it's pink. Girls will buy it. It's like, no, that's not going to work,
Yeah.
I realize that works with iPhones, but it doesn't work with real life and in software sometimes. And so there's just this whole debate, and then there's the whole like the bro division where they just want to like blow stuff up, and they don't want to worry about girls, and they just want to look at booth babes and stuff. And
Right.
there's endless debates about this kind of stuff. I forget the woman's name who's doing that YouTube series about female roles in video gaming and stuff. She did a whole Kickstarter thing, got a bunch of money for it, and it's really been a very big controversy. She was gonna like all these like really weird. Like weird, creepy mouth breather type guys giving her all these death threats. Like, how dare you bring up this issue? You're going to ruin video gaming because they're going to put in women who aren't just like wearing bikinis. And people have real investments in some of these things. And that's probably a better podcast than what we're doing today. But anyway,
That's weird.
so back to Diablo 3 stuff.
Yes.
Obviously, I wanted guests on the show today who have been playing a lot of Crusader over time because the recent patch came out on Tuesday and had tons of changes to skills. But like what, 2/3 of Crusader skills got like a total. Most of them got buffed.
Yeah.
And then of course the day after that they released, hey, hotfix, we're going to change the total drop rates of everything and make lots more legendary items and gambling and stuff. So they really boosted our content here. But I really want to. I guess we'll stick with the first point a little bit to get on the Crusader stuff. You've been playing a lot of Crusader from the launch. So could you give me a brief overview of how he felt for the first 2 weeks and then how he feels the last 4 days?
Sure thing. So the Crusader, I was following its development in beta.
So there's only male Crusaders. I realize it's a female one, but that doesn't count. The same way there are only female demon hunters.
I'm playing a female Crusader. She's beautiful.
Well, then you're wrong.
She's strong and beautiful, Flux. Come full circle with me.
It's like Lawrence Taylor in a dress. Okay, next.
Oh my goodness. But in any case, before we offend anyone else, so I was following the development just to see how the class was developing, how it was coming along. And I know that Whitney in particular, Nineball, was having a lot of issues with resource management on the Crusader, just saying that the resources didn't generate well enough. And, I tested it out when I first got my hands on it and got it up to 70. And I definitely agreed, but it's become this weird microcosm of it depends on the build that you have, because if you're running with a two-hander and using Heavenly Strength, which is pretty much the best way to get the DPS of your Crusader up, yes, it's going to play slower because guess what? The weapon speed of a two-hander is much slower. So the slow attack speed absolutely correlates to the slow generation of Wrath. So you're going to run into issues. And then a lot of the skills are cooldowns, so you just kind of always feel like you're waiting to do something with your Crusader. But then, once this patch dropped, luckily I just found a Thunder Fury the weekend before it happened. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to switch everything. I'm going to try out all these new skills. I'm going to equip this Thunder Fury, so go one-hander. And obviously it's a super powerful weapon just on its own, but the fact that they buffed all the generators made it so that you could actually mow down an elite pack with your generator while you're waiting for some of the cooldowns to come back, while you're waiting for the Wrath to come up. But I was also getting much more Wrath because I was using the one-hander.
So the generators are if you haven't played a Crusader yet, they're kind of like they're not that different from some of the monk and the barbarian skills, except you have the one shield throw, which is kind of a ranged attack as well. Of course, the barbarian has weapon throw, I suppose, and no one ever really uses it unless they have the 300 spear.
Right.
Someday I will. I keep wanting to. I keep promising myself. But that was my experience of the Crusader in the beta. That all the generators seemed really slow and clunky, and then once you had Spirit, what was it, Wrath, you could just devastate things instantly, but it was so long to regenerate. And you're saying that's true if you have a stupid build and you don't know what you're doing.
Essentially, I mean, I don't know.
But your Crusaderess has a better idea now.
Crusaderist. Yeah, I think that there's going to be different strokes for different folks. It seems like a lot of people just get obsessed with that DPS number. Like, it needs to be bigger, it needs to be higher. When I threw on the Thunder Fury, because it's not as high of a DPS as whatever I was using before, of course the paper sheet DPS is going to go down. But the fact that I was able to spam something like Fist of the Heavens far more often than I could when I was using the two-hander meant that my actual killing speed went up. Simply because I could actually use my skills, more than I had been before. So it didn't feel as bursty. It seemed like a lot of people have been playing the Crusader in more of a burst fashion of, I need to pop all of my buffs and then, throw down like the impactful bombardment. And whatever else big cooldown skill I can get, and then whatever very, very little points of wrath I have left, throw out my spender. And I don't know. I think part of that is definitely because the Crusader is so new that we haven't figured out kind of the most efficient builds for it, or just what's going to perform the best over time. So I think we're still getting there. But these buffs definitely go a long way. And if you look at some of the philosophy that they gave us, it definitely seems like they were watching and listening to some of the feedback, and making it so that it doesn't have to be about using only those huge damage skills that really do feel like you're waiting for. It's like a hurry up and wait game. Instead, you can actually still feel like your Crusader is doing something to help out the party or yourself while you wait for the wrath and things to come back.
I think your point about DPS still, people are still really worshiping the sheet DPS, even though we've got, many people have pointed out, you can do so much more damage with, those plus bonuses to elemental skills, and there's plus bonuses to individual skills. People can have, sheet DPS can be really misleading now, and especially in terms of generation of stuff. I've always noticed it. Like I never liked using two-handers, a big slow crossbow with a Demon Hunter. Obviously, the Mana Core was the biggest Demon Hunter weapon forever, but it was just so slow. And if you have, I think if the game is tuned properly, it sounds like the Crusader is getting towards that now. There should be obvious, pros and cons. If you use a really big damage, slow attack. If you want to use a Scorn, in Diablo 3 terms, there are drawbacks, and the drawbacks is that you generate very little resource, except you do massive damage with what you do hit with. And people the barbarian build I really enjoy is playing a frenzy barb with two one-handed weapons that are fast.
Yes.
So I just like hitting really fast with it. And some people play barbs with like bash and a big slow two-hander, and they're doing 3 times my sheet damage per hit or something, but I'm hitting 4 times as often and generating more resource. At least that's the theory, right?
Right. Exactly. And yeah, so it's like 18 million different ways to skin a cat, and the one that appeals to you the most will essentially line up with your playstyle. So I guess if you're someone who comes to the Crusader from maining a Demon Hunter like I did, imagine that. My playstyle with the Demon Hunter was kind of move everywhere super quickly. Use the 2 one-handed crossbows because they gave us nice buffs to those with the archery passive, I believe. So it was just a lot of fun to kind of do the pew 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 and have that attack speed be off the charts and just mow stuff down over time instead of just one big hit and hope it all dies, and if not, just sit and wait. And kind of applying that same idea to my Crusader. Although that leads me to, we should definitely talk about Steed Charge, because that was a big skill that they changed. So
how did they change that for readers who might not know, listeners?
Yeah, so they took the duration of it, which at the base skill was just 2 seconds. They bumped that down to 1.5, and the main rune that gave it a longer duration, endurance, originally brought it up to 3, and now they brought that down from 3 to 2. So if you want the original base, you would have to rune it for endurance. So they essentially killed endurance. Because if you think about it, before you were getting a 33% increase, I think. I shouldn't do math on the podcast. People are going to be like, oh my god, he got it wrong. And now it's 0.25 or 25%, I believe. you know.
However,
However, you now get to write it more often because before it was 25 seconds on the cooldown, and now it's down to 16. So it's now 9 seconds that you don't have to wait, which is good. I honestly think that it's a healthy change. When I first saw it, I was like, oh man, so this essentially is going to be a skill that I use to kind of sort of move myself into a new position, but it's not really a skill that I use to move myself across the map because 3 seconds is a significant amount of time. And when you're used to that and you're coming down this 1.5, it literally felt like I would hit the button and the skill would just break. It'd be like, you're on the horse. Oh, you're not on the horse. Like, wait, what? Did I actually hit it or not? But now it does feel like it helps more in combat than just moving you around the map, which is cool because a lot of Crusader plays, yes, you can tank stuff. Like you'll sit there in Molten, in Plagued, and you won't notice your health going down, a bunch right away, especially if you've got the right levels of toughness and healing. But, there are definitely some of those hairier situations, and if you're, just used your Steed Charge to get into battle, you're using it on the map to move yourself faster through the zone. Now it's on cooldown for 25 seconds, and hey, guess what? Good luck if you get walled and you can't move past the stuff, because Steed Charge also gives you the ability to move through your enemies unhindered. So, it's just a really great escape skill now. And I think that's kind of the direction that they wanted to push it in, because it doesn't, before it used to break stuns and freezes and things like that, and now it doesn't. So it actually makes you want to play more proactively to get out of those situations instead of just sitting there tanking and spanking and, oh, I got frozen, let me just hit the Steed Charge.
when I used that in the beta, it seemed like the 3 seconds I would often, you clean up a pack and you pick up some crap off the ground and then you go to the next group, and that's when I would often Steed Charge. And 3 seconds was more than I needed. I would get to them in 2 seconds and I would just kind of run in a circle around them for the last half second of it. So it seems like being able to do it more often and not going as far. Obviously, it's nicer to have it longer if you've finished a whole huge section of dungeon and you want to just plow through it as quickly as possible.
Like if you're stuck in the barracks.
Yeah, we don't go there. The other problem is really noticeable with the Crusader when you play in a party is if you're using the passive that makes you able to use two-handed weapons, is you run, what is it, you're capped at 10% movement speed increase, I think, instead of 25.
Yep.
And so every time unless you can Steed Charge between groups, everyone else is just gone, and you're like, you're chugging along in the back, dragging an organ behind you. And that seems like that was a really annoying factor I had in multiplayer. I was playing with Holy Knight one night with just a barbarian or something, and he gets every pack, but it was like almost dead. He just run up and pick up some items, and I'd take off again. It's like he's like, this is fun, I get to run along and do nothing. But that seems like they fixed that a little bit. As you say, if you use a one-handed weapon, you hit a lot faster, and you don't have to suffer that drawback. But DPS, but sweet DPS.
Right, the E-ping.
So are you noticing it's more fun in parties since you're using a one-handed weapon now?
I would if I partied. So I basically did this really kind of douchebag move where I embargoed myself from partying up with anyone else for, I guess I was originally saying like the first 2 weeks or so, and it's kind of extended past that, just because I wanted to really stay in this period of testing, being able to see, okay, how does the Crusader stand up on its own? Because if you get into a party with a monk that's buffing you, like, with the new passive that they have, Unity, that's not going to give you a clear indication of just how powerful your Crusader is. Like, if Torment 2 is really easy for you in a party, does not mean, especially in hardcore, that, oh, okay, friends aren't on, I'll just go ahead and do Torment 2 because I was doing it yesterday, and all of a sudden you get slaughtered in a corner somewhere. So yeah, I guess a bit selfish on my part, but I did want to be able to just have some of that unbiased, unfettered playtime with the Crusader.
You just don't have any friends, right? Just admit it.
And that was the long way of saying I have no friends. I'm recruiting.
Yes, except for all the ones you were at Penny Arcade with.
That's right, yeah. That I pretended that I was friends with.
So how does the Crusader feel now? I mean, they made tons of changes, and at least half the skills got a buff. I keep meaning to start one. I just haven't had time to play enough. I've just been doing nothing but Demon Hunter. I played a little bit of Barb the last couple of days, but I just haven't had time to really get into another class. And I think I was kind of waiting for them to make some changes to the Crusader because it didn't seem like it was in that great a place at the end of the beta. And do you feel like it's in that great place now? Are you really enjoying the class now, or are you sick of it and ready to play a wizard or something?
I'm still very much enjoying it. Actually, one big thing to talk about too, especially both as hardcore players, is that they gave, finally after all the clamoring of, this is a tank class, we're in melee range, I don't understand why we don't get innate damage reduction, they gave them 15% damage reduction now. So that's huge for hardcore, obviously for the reasons that if you don't change anything about your build at all, right, you're still going to be far better off than you were previously in terms of safety because you're just taking that less damage now. But what it also means is that you can now trade off 15% of your toughness that you had before and use that to then, okay, go ahead and boost that character sheet DPS, or even just take some of those affixes that were being taken up by all res or even some healing, and get a lightning damage percent increase or something that's going to make your character more powerful, which will then allow you to bump up into a higher torment, for instance. So it's kind of interesting that there are these weird interplays between, like, you need the right amount of DPS, you need the right amount of toughness, you need the right amount of healing, and sometimes progressing forward doesn't always necessarily mean like more DPS. Like if you are the patient type of player that will just sit there and wait for the mob to die, and you're not doing as much damage to it as you could be, but you're super, super safe, that's one way to play the game. But another way to progress too is to then say, all right, if I can kill the monster before it gets too dangerous for me, then that's also another way to get up into those higher difficulties. And so I think they allowed us to do a little bit more of that. And that's just kind of my long spiel before saying I think the Crusader is in a much better place. I think there are still ways to improve it. And I don't know. I go back and forth on the fact that having a two-hander while wearing a shield feels really good. There's also a shield in the game with a legendary proc that takes away the debuff to your movement speed when you're using Heavenly Strength. And so obviously that's something that they wanted in there for that synergy. But I would really actually like to see it, because you have movement speed in Paragon, so it's like, why can you even add points to that if it's never going to be able to go above that cap? So I would like to see being able to make your movement speed offset. Not necessarily by the gear, but even if it was just by the Paragon points themselves, that would give them a little bit more heftiness. Like, okay, this is an important thing I want to spec into so that I can play my two-hander and not feel like I'm running through molasses.
Yeah, but that 200 is such a huge DPS boost. I guess there's also a penalty of being really slow, but I mean, you can imagine other classes if they could use a two-handed weapon and a quiver or something. Like I said, well, I say that's a bad example because you can do that with a demon hunter, but
Yeah.
but I mean, barbarians or something like that. If you could use a two-hander and a shield, you'd be like mega tank. But why would you use a shield of barbarian? Because you just hit things fast, unless you're hardcore.
So hardcore. Yeah, it is. It's a tough thing to balance. I just really like the fact that it makes two-handers relevant because they really aren't, except for the Crusaders, because they get that sort of OP feel to them while obviously suffering the movement speed. But it really is I think one of the reasons that a lot of people are shying away from them right now is because you can just gear up that much faster with a wizard that's, teleporting all over the map, a demon hunter that's vaulting all over the map, a monk that's dashing, striking all over the map. So it's just like, it's not the most mobile class, even though it feels really good to play now. Your damage is great, greatly improved. But until we can keep up with a lot of the other classes, I think people will still just not use it for farming.
Or they'll just play solo. So changing the topic, another thing in the patch was a big buff to legendary material drop rates, and there's been lots of posts about farming them and where do you go to get them and stuff, and I've been doing up some posts about that myself. Have you noticed the increased drop rate? Are you scouting for legendary materials and doing crafting now?
Oh my God. I'm not even scouting for them, right? I'm just playing the bounties to play the bounties and hope for some of the specific legendaries that come out of those. And I can't stop getting slapped in the face with these legendary materials. Like I will say I was farming the Reaper's wraps, Reaper's Sphere and the plan from Malthael because they actually fixed its drop rate so it was attainable. And on your way, you have to go through Pandemonium 2 and get up to Pandemonium 3 to go and fight him. And on your way, you fight like three purples that, spawn out of midair. And I think they all have the ability to drop the Angelic Shard, which is a legendary material that you need to make the hollowed items from the hollowed plan. And I think I have 10 of those now because it took me forever to get the Reaper Sphere. So it still seems like maybe some of them are a little bit rarer than others. Or maybe just the fact that I had, three more chances per one chance on Malthael to see that drop come. But I was getting all these legendary materials for legendaries that I didn't want to make at the time. So they're all cluttering up my stash now. And it kind of makes me wonder, like, can I buy a new stash tab just for these things? I mean,
Well, they do stack to 1,000, so you're probably not going to be too much of a problem.
That's true, but there are just so
Have you
many of
considered
them.
have you considered just selling them in the auction house? Oh wait,
Oh,
how about trading them? Oh wait,
oh. Yeah, be
Yes, I've noticed a little buff on those, and some things are nice. I was doing the wiki page on it, trying to figure out how to structure it. I mean, it's obvious what information you need there, what content you need. But I was like, how do I rank these in terms of difficulty versus easiness of obtaining them or something? And some, like you mentioned, some of them like the Angelic Shard or like Adventurer's Journals and stuff you find all the time. And there's some that are from bosses that drop a lot, and there's some that you have to like totally go out of your way to find you would never ever find otherwise.
right.
And the
Especially
one I've been searching for a lot is the Shimmering Quill, which only drops from purple quill fiends. And really, there's like the only place you ever find those is in the cellars along the Old Tristram Road, going right at the start of the game.
that's like when
But
people were doing those.
yeah, you would never go there unless you wanted that item. And it's not that hard to find them because it's a fairly small area to run through. But there's some of these things you just get by accident. You can't help it. Like the symbol of the whatever brotherhood you get,
That's
the
another
big guys
one.
on the top of the fortress in Act 3 drop, and you just get those all the time. I had like 20 of those in the beta. And other stuff you just never get by accident unless you go to specific bosses. Magda's the only source for her drop that you need for Kane's Destiny set,
Right.
which isn't hard to get to, but you're not really doing, she's not exactly on your way anywhere else. You don't accidentally run into Magda just heading over to kill Asmodan or something.
Exactly. And
So
Waterfiend
like,
was talking to me a couple nights ago on in game, and he was saying that he ran into a tough issue. I think it was him. He ran into a tough issue because the legendary material that he needed to farm came from a purple that only it was like one of those rare spawns of like the archivist or something, one of the ghosts. So unless it was a bounty in his game, he was just leaving the game and recreating it. And
there's a lot of those purple ghosts though.
but I think only that one could drop the one that he wanted.
No, well, not according to the wiki page I was updating.
Uh,
If you just go to the Festering Woods or something, you get them all the time there, that kind of place.
Interesting.
But the other thing is do they spawn as bounties or not? I mean, knowing that this guy is somewhere on like keep level 2, it's like okay, great. There's keep level 2 takes 10 minutes to clear just by itself, whereas I can get to Magda in a minute and a half, just from the bounty, just knowing that she's there every game. Or like people that need the one from Isual, you've got to run through the whole Silver Spire to get to Isual, but at least he's there every game, right?
Right. So every game.
It's kind of hard to determine which ones of these are easier or harder. Or maybe the drop rate is enough now that if you just play a lot of bounties, eventually you'll get almost all of them, one way or the other.
I think that is how it will play out, and kind of like how I was saying previously, like you end up banking up a bunch of the ones that you might not even have the plan for them yet. I know I have a few that I'm just like I didn't even know that this was an item that I could craft because I haven't seen the plan. So eventually, once we find more plans and things like that, I think we'll go into our stashes like, oh, I have 3 of the materials already that I need for this just because from playing the game.
Yeah, that's a nice coincidence when it occurs. Related topic is that they buffed the legendary drop rate a lot. I mean, from gambling, also the drop rate, but just from gambling as well. And it seems like, as people hopefully know, you cannot get the Torment only gear from gambling, and you can't get Torment only gear from legendary Herodic caches as well, or caches as some people say, and I always laugh at.
This is Xanth says. I'm like that doesn't sound right.
Well, he finds those in RoSS, so it works out nice.
He's got it all backwards.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, so the caches, or caches as people who speak English call them, can't drop the Torment stuff, and you can't get that from gambling. But it seems like they've really boosted in generally the crafting stuff. You can make some really good crafting recipes, but they're not as good as like the Torment only legendaries,
Right.
and Torment only sets especially. So it seems like the overall design theme here is Blizzard's trying to make it much easier to gear up to get to Torment. You can gamble a lot more effectively. You can find a lot more legendaries early on. You can find a lot more legendary materials and make stuff. And so you can make like a really good character to plow through Master or get to Torment 1 or Torment 2 with these various different options not long after you hit 70, especially if you've already got some gear built up. You got some materials built up like you do. But then you have to really farm Torment, especially in Rifts, to get the really super high quality gear and advance further. And I guess that's a good strategy. I mean, they haven't said that overtly, but that does seem like what's sort of the result of their changes. Do you get that sense? And are you in Torment 7 yet?
I wish. I definitely agree with that. It does seem like, especially the buff to Kadala, just because you can't get the Torment legendaries there, it seems like her sole purpose now is, maybe you're a fresh 70, or maybe you're a 70 and you just haven't found, a good legendary drop for a certain slot. Well, now you can take some of those shards that you're getting from doing the bounties, from, doing the rift bosses, and essentially select your upgrade. It's going to come now that the drop rate or the legendary rate coming from the gambling is significantly higher. For anecdotal evidence, before the buff, before the hotfix, I think I gambled away like 4,000 shards, like a ridiculous amount of shards, mostly collected through the rifts. And I want to say I've gotten 3 legendaries from it, 2 belts, um, and 1 helm. And after it, I used 500 and I got 4. I mean, obviously, like some of it is RNG. Like it could be that I'll now go for a 3,500 shard, deficit and never see another legendary. But just the fact that right away it felt like it was making an impact and a difference, and I'm still trying to find that upgrade for my belt. It's just a good feeling to say like I have some control over what I can find in the game. It's not just leaving it all up to chance.
Yeah, and RNG is, of course, random number generator, which is kind of the code we use for good luck or bad luck, or as people say it in Scotland, ringe.
Do they
Yeah,
actually?
he had really good ringe in RoSS. It worked out nicely for Paul. And I went on the night they did the buff to legendary drop rates, and I had like, I forget, I posted this in the news page. I'm reading the numbers. I think I had 408 shards at that point, and I blew all of them on chest armor and did not get a single unique or legendary or set. And I was like, oh, that sucks. Then I just went and did 2 rifts quickly while I was in the game. Just what the hell, get a few rifts. I did them on expert, I think, and you get like 26 and 28 shards. And I gambled all the rest of them. And literally, the last one I gambled got me, I had, 7 shards left. Last chest piece, it was legendary.
Oh, nice.
And it was actually a pretty good roll. It was Tyrael's Might. It wasn't an upgrade for my character, but it would be good for maybe if I do a monk or something could use it. But it was that was funny. So I ended up doing 93 total and got 1. And I mentioned that in clan chat, and clan chat is a thing that people who play with friends and have other people on their user list can use Katniss. You want to try it sometime? It's really
Whoa,
fun.
new feature?
Whoa, hey now. And I mentioned this roll, and people were like, that's really unlucky. I did 100 and got 5 legendaries earlier or something.
Wow.
So, and people weren't, and people did a bunch of comments in the news post about that, and it seems like 1 legendary for maybe every 25 to 40 or so is what people are kind of running in terms of what they're gambling. And obviously some gambles are 5 and some are 20, depending on what you're gambling. So
Yeah.
good luck getting that unique amulet. But obviously the drop rate is much better. I hadn't done near as many gambling or shards as you had, but I had gotten very few previously, and I've gotten more since then than I had before they did this buff. So,
Definitely.
but of course you can't get the tournament only stuff. So the kind of the long term before was like, why would you even bother gambling? Because you can't ever get an upgrade for a really well geared character because you can't get the tournament only legendaries.
Right.
And so Blizzard must have said, huh, good point. We'll make it so you can get the early stuff real easily and quickly, and then you'll be happy. And then you can go play in Torment and kick ass or not.
Yeah, so definitely
Or die like a dog.
it definitely seems like it's propped up to support exactly what you stated before, kind of that bridge the gap after you complete your leveling up to 70 or getting through story mode if that's what you're doing for some weird reason. And yeah, make sure you can actually get some of that, maybe not the nicest gear, but gear that'll help you enter Torment 1 with your friends or something like that and be able to get in there and do the face roll, move on up. But yeah, I'm only, because it's hardcore for me, I like to play the safe, like on the difficulty that can get me the best rewards, but still be the safest. So I don't even know if I'm Torment 2 ready or not. I probably could do it and survive, but it just makes more sense to me to do Torment 1 and keep getting stronger at that, because it'll just get faster. And then eventually, hopefully, someone's in Torment 2 running a Rift 50% slower than I'm doing it, but their drop rate is 20% better. I would imagine that whatever they're finding, I should be finding about a little bit more than they would if the numbers play out right.
And their death rate's 100% higher than you, so that's another factor.
Exactly.
Yeah, if you can even do master, solo, you can do like T1 effortlessly in a group and probably even do T2 or T3. Just looking at the gear people have on when they're doing this in the clan chats and stuff. People who are wearing gear that's like, I wouldn't even consider it close to good enough for Torment solo, and they're doing T2 games and having no problems in hardcore. So until bad things happen, and then they have lots of problems. But yeah, party buffs are really. I mean, monsters only increase 50% in the hit points for each additional player now. I mean, it used to be like 90% when the game launched, and they've steadily lowered it over the years.
Right.
So 3 people, they're only double the hit points, and you're triple the destructive power in theory. So,
Right.
and you can take turns and share your cooldowns and other such things. So I'm skipping a couple of topics here because we're already an hour, and we need to end this pretty soon. 'Cause you have to go to bed, so you can get up in the morning and go penny arcading again.
That's right.
So since you've done a million bounties, I twittered today, and I'm going to do an article about like the top five and the bottom five bounties in the game. The old Flux's Decahedron. People occasionally still say, "Why don't you do those anymore?" So I'm going to try to whip one of those out, and it's sort of a sarcastic, nonsensical, whatever. But it's the whole point of this is not, this bounty is the best return on time by zero point 0.2 seconds. Therefore, it is the best bounty in the game. That's not how they're rated because that's not fun to read. And so I was thinking, what's the best, what's the worst? And you replied in a tweet, the barracks level 2,
Yes, oh my God.
which is the barracks level 1. It's the dungeon right at the end, right before you go out into the surface of Act 3. And there's a little dungeon on the left there when you run along that long walkway. And it's the first level of that is like the size of the Keep 2, or maybe larger. And you've just got to find the stairs to level 2. And the level 2 is huge. Level 2 is like the Keep level 3. It's giant.
It's unbelievable.
Usually those level 2 bounties, there's like 10 monsters. It's some tiny little area, like, some goat cave or something. There's a couple of spiders in it.
Mm.
This one's like bigger than like the first level of some bounty dungeons. It's just crazy. I don't know if they haven't gotten back to that one in their buffing or patching or whatever. But
I wonder.
if you get that one in Act 3, don't do all 5. That'll take longer than like all the Act 1 bounties put together.
Seriously, yeah, just make a new game. It's unbelievable because a lot of the other level 2s are very linear too. So even if it says kill every monster, you're gonna run across every monster by the time you get to the little pylon at the end. But if you're doing the friggin' barracks level 2, they have some of those ones where it's like you can go 3 ways, like there's the left side, the right side,
Yeah,
and
there's big ass dead ends basically.
so you end up just like fucking hating your life, and it's like, why am I even doing
And
this?
all this for like 9 million experience. Oh god, hell no.
Exactly.
But that's kind of a bad example because my whole point was that it's not just the ones that take the longest or take the least time that are the worst and the best. But sometimes if it's that bad, it is the worst. But do you have a favorite bounty? Is there one that you really enjoy? And maybe you're hunting for the legendary material from Boss X, and you're so happy when you see him in a bounty, even though it's not really that super profitable a bounty. Or do you just love the red chests, or what?
I think the red chests, honestly, are some of the best, just because I love those events when I come across them randomly in the game, if I'm on another bounty. So the fact, especially in Act 4, you can almost predict exactly what the bounties would be, because I think there are just such few events in that act that there's not really a huge pool to choose from. So the one in Silver Spire 2 is usually a cursed chest, and it's one of the 100, kill 100 enemies in a certain time. And that one just feels really good because that level is also chock full of elites. So you're doing the kill thing, and there's a couple of the, and I'm blanking on the name of the guys who like are huge and they slam you on their head.
Mallet Lords.
Mallet Lords, yes. So you're trying to DPS those down and hopefully not die, and then all of a sudden a succubus throws her debuff on you from afar, and it aggroes another pack, and it just becomes this chaotic thing. But it has such a good feeling to it because the more mobs you have around you, then the more your AoE is benefiting you. But also just the fact that it feels good by the time you finish. You're like, dude, I survived that, and it was awesome. And I get to open a chest that gives me 3 items.
Some people hate Act 4, though. It's funny. I asked the same question to Ellie earlier today, and she said, anything but Act 4. I hate Act 4. So I kind of like Act 4 because it's such big open levels. You can move through them pretty quickly.
Mm-hmm.
But of course, they have some really tough monsters. So I guess it depends on your character power and what difficulty you're on, etc. But yeah, there's lots of bounties. I mean, there's if you get to these detailed ones, I mean, they're all obviously pretty much similar. There's red chests, or there's dungeon clears, or there's find a purple kind of things. But you do occasionally get ones like, oh, I've never seen that, or I've seen that very seldom, or it'll be some purple, you have no idea who it is or where it is, you've never seen the name before, you're like, really, that's a bounty? So there are some fairly rare ones, and of course, well, I'm not going to mention, the best one ever, I already have my number 1, I'm not sure anything can get better than it, but I'm not going to mention it. So
Oh, really, cliffhanger?
Well, it's a 2-word title, and the first word is kill, so that might narrow it down for you. But that's just because, fans, it's the fans getting their revenge. But anyway, and it's not Jay Wilson.
That's exactly who I thought of when you said fans getting revenge.
There is no Jay Wilson kill Jay Wilson bounty. That would be awesome. That would obviously be the best one.
It would be really cool.
Maybe there could be a Kiss Josh bounty. That'd be the best one, the second best one. Because everyone loves Joshy Washington.
Everybody does.
So, skipping a couple of things. Any final thoughts? We're at our time limit. You have to go to bed so you can penny arcade. What have you been doing? What are you hoping forward? Are you just looking forward to Booth Babes tomorrow?
Oh, dream of the Booth Babes. In the meantime, I actually am super enjoying Reaper. I'm absolutely loving the buff to legendaries and rifts because it really felt like the reason why I was doing so many bounties originally was just because they felt robust. It was a nice way to get around and see the different environments, especially Act 5, because I only played through it just the once to unlock adventure mode. So now I'm getting to see a lot of those cool side quests and explore those environments more. But the rifts just always felt like they were in this awkward spot of like, do I want to do these? Like, is it gonna be, a good use of my time while I'm playing the game? And it was always this weird indication from the team that they wanted rifts to be very profitable, like the most efficient way for getting EXP, for getting loot, for getting everything. And now they're slowly making those changes because we saw the 25% and now the 100% buff to the legendaries, and it definitely was in effect because I only got to mess with them briefly one night, but I was averaging one legendary per run in Torment 1, and sometimes like chaining like three or two of them together at the same time. So it was that really good feeling of, okay, I'm seeing the reward here. I want to do more rifts.
And that's like, what, 15, 20 minutes per rift?
Yeah, yep.
Which is more than one every 2 hours.
It sure is, yeah.
Nerf hammer.
Right? Oh no, we overtuned it.
And the other benefit of you doing bounties for a month or for 2 weeks, you have 1,000 rift stones now, so you can just keep doing rifts forever.
It does really feel infinite.
You stocked them up.
You get them from rifts too, so it doesn't ever feel like I'll run out. By the time I run out or get close to running out, I'll want to do bounties again.
Exactly. Okay, well, that's it. You've been listening to the Diablo 3 podcast. We are online at diabloincgamers.com. And we have about 5 topics that we haven't got to tonight, so maybe we'll do a show next week or in the middle of the week or something.
Nice.
And there'll be more, because more.
Everyone.
And thanks for your time, Katniss, and thanks to Rush, who's gone off to do rushing things and having crumpets and scones and bagpipes. And good night. Moo.
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 Moo.